Welcome everybody here to KC Happy Hour episode number 84, I believe, as we continue to inch closer to 100. As you guys can tell, I'm not in our normal studio. We have just gotten to the track here in Houston for the US Pro Kart Series Texas Grand Prix here at Speedsportz Racing Park. This week's show is going to have, of course, our fantasy picks. As always, fantasy picks are open right now. If you want to go ahead and pick your five of who you think will go out the best, we'll give you guys some tips throughout the show from our KC crew members. Alex, Searle, Emory, Lyda, Aaron, and Taylor will all be joining me here in just a few moments. We'll have Aden Rudolph hopefully joining the show in a little bit, as there's nobody better probably to get someone to give you an insight and preview into what to expect and how to be fast around Speedsportz Racing Park than the kid whose family owns the place. So we'll have him on, and then at the end of the show, Christian Marsh from the NKA and the Stars Championship Series will join me in the final segment. So if you have any questions, of course, for next week's Stars Championship Series night fight at GoPro Motorplex, that's where we go straight after here to the second of a two-leg little stint we have before a very, very busy summer we've got kicking off the Memorial Day weekend and then on to it. So there's some news to cover. There's some stuff to predict for the weekend and overall catching up with everybody. So let's bring the crew on in. Taylor, Aaron, Emory, Alex, we'll go ahead and bring you guys on into the studio as we're all kind of spread out with some of us here headed trackside, some of us not so much. But let's go into the news a little bit. Aaron and Taylor, you guys were compiling a lot of the stuff that we had over the last few weeks. So I'll pass it off to you guys what we have to recap.
Yeah, so one of the first things I thought was pretty cool that we saw was the at the Long Beach GP, not Long Island, Long Beach GP, Honda HPD brought out an electric go-kart with some cool removable batteries and some interesting new technology there. And obviously with the way that the environmentalism has been going, stuff like that, there is going to be inevitably a point where we're probably all going to be running electric carts, or we might be able to get away with an exception from the rule, but there's a lot of push towards electric right now, and this is one of the cool examples of that. It's got removable batteries, so you can swap out batteries in between sessions, stuff like that. It sounds like it went pretty well. They had a demo with a few of the IndyCar drivers, and overall, I just thought it was a pretty cool little project they had going on, showcasing out at Long Beach.
Yeah, the electric stuff's really been pioneered. I think really the first group that I saw doing it, at least here stateside and probably around the world, was the guys up at Sonoma. The Sim Raceway Karting Center's had like an electric class for years. They've got a kart that's similar. I have to imagine a lot of the tech was kind of traded back and forth, being out in California, being a little bit up that way towards the Bay Area. And then, I know the Sonoma guys were also really involved in giving a lot of advice and kind of some extra consulting a little bit with the Rotax TV project. So it was cool. And what was cool about that event too was that, it was almost kind of hidden. It wasn't like a promoted extra go-kart race. I think the only little bit of media I saw was a couple press releases from people that were there. And then Honda did a cool little couple-minute video. 2017 X30 Junior IAME World Final Champion David Malukas, who happens to also be an IndyCar driver, won. So no shock there. Always the younger guys that are a little more fresh out of the seat can win those kinds of stuff. But it's cool. Yeah, I mean, for, where we've seen over the last just 12 months of doing this show, 18 months of doing this show, that you've got both, tracks that have come up, and then we've also lost some racetracks, none so far to noise ordinances and sound pollution. But hey, it's something to be looking to the future, and I don't think it'll ever replace anything that we're doing. But, it's cool to see an investment made by a group like HPD and Honda into the sport, because they carried the shifter karting stuff for like 20-something years.
Speaking of track updates, Xander, of course, in other news, Trackhouse Complex is now the new name of what formerly was GoPro Motorplex up in Mooresville, North Carolina. A lot of big things. Of course, it is owned by one of the co-founders and co-owners of Trackhouse Racing, Justin Marks, who is able to build this facility into being one of the top karting facilities, I have to say, in the Southeast region. It's a really great opportunity. And of course, for a lot of us who live in the Carolinas, such as Emory and Xander, we go there quite regularly throughout the entire 2022 and 2023 campaigns of the karting calendar. A lot of things are really excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, so, with Justin owning it, has always been a part of the Trackhouse, really just the Justin Marks empire. And he was, before GoPro, the company got sold, there was a sponsorship deal there that was in place. And then it was kind of seeing what was going to be next. It was originally Mooresville Motorplex when they first built it. And then with Justin's involvement in GoPro, brought that big sponsorship here. And now it just kind of officially is branded as the same within the Trackhouse family. So, He's done cool events there all the time. And now we get to give Christian some heck because the first race at Trackhouse Motorplex will be the Stars Night Fight. I don't know what kind of branding he's done. I know there hasn't been a whole lot of GoPro logos in there, but I can't wait to give Christian some heck about it later on the show tonight. So we'll get to see the new branding. They got the sign up. I think everything else is pretty much changed, but it's business as usual. But at least, I think more than anything, it's a sign that Justin hasn't forgot about the place, if anyone thought that he did, by, extending everything else that he's doing into it. I mean, Pitbull's got an album coming out called Trackhouse here. They're running all kinds of cool stuff on both cars, and expanding in a bunch of different ways with all the new projects they've been doing, like Project 91 and everything else. So it's cool to see that, he's still just as much as he was back in 2011, 2010, when the track was getting developed and built, and through the whole process, still a big passion project for him and still involved in. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think you can take away from it, other than the fact that now everyone that got first used to calling it Mooresville, then got used to calling it GoPro, and now going to call it Trackhouse. And it's going to be a little confusing. There's a lot of track houses out there now with a NASCAR team, an album, and then a whole lot of other branding. What else?
I think Aaron might be muted.
Aaron, how do you always manage to do this, man?
I don't know how I managed to do it, man. Unfortunately, Aden Rudolph will be missing Houston. I believe he had a cashew allergy, if I remember correctly. Very bad reaction to it, and he's got to be kept. They have to keep an eye on him until he makes a full recovery. So Aden will be missing the race. We're all hoping he gets better, and we'll be missing him out in Houston this weekend.
Yep. There's a lot of notables and movers and shakers there. So we'll get into our prediction segment here with Alex and Emory and everybody. With Aden out, opens kind of a temporary ride where everything's all set up, turnkey, ready to go. So Speed Concepts brought in Hannah Greenemeyer back, the 2021 SKUSA Pro Tour X30 champ. She's doing F4 this year. She's got I think when I talked to her at the beginning of the year, because she's been around the kart track a little bit, she was hanging out at the Winter Series finale down in February at Homestead, cheering on Austin Garrison and Ryan Norberg. And I think she was hoping to get at least a couple of shifter starts, but it's cool to see her around anyway. And again, talking about people staying connected to, stuff they've been around for a while. She's still been around the go-kart track quite a bit, by coaching regionally here in Texas for the Texas Sprint Racing Series with the Lobaw Track Karting Services team with Austin. So she's still super involved. I'm curious to see how rusty or not rusty she feels like she'll be when we get in. We get 2 full days of practice. That's plenty of time normally for a top-level driver like herself to get in. But best wishes to Aden. Yeah, like Aaron said, his dad reached out. He was got hospitalized. He's had, obviously it's not like an allergy popped up, but really, really extreme allergic reaction. The community poured out in support. And I think the text I got from Mike Speed was, when it rains, it pours. So poor kid was on what seemed to be probably the hottest streak he's been on so far, coming off a really, really good stint in Orlando, and was looking to put momentum into this week. So best wishes to Aden. He's going to slated to, I think, make full recovery. Just going to have to miss out on this round of the national tour. I think he'll be back for the next round, which I'm pretty sure on the pro national circuit, they weren't running the Stars series. So that would be Utah, with the SKUSA Pro Tour in like a month and a half. So best wishes to Aden and them. But let's go ahead and we'll switch gears with our news kind of just knocked out of the way of the quick bullet points we had. Along with, races from last week. CKNA North was on last week. There's regional racing going on this week too. There's CKNA South over at Kershaw. Best of luck to the regional guys over there. But for USPKS, storylines into the week, right? Brandon Carr leads the championship, didn't win the main, was consistent throughout the whole week, which saw about the entire top 15 have kind of ups and downs days through the heats and the finals. There's more points for qualifying than any other series has had in the modern era. There's rain in the forecast. There was a little bit of rain today. There's been rain yesterday. There's a little chance of rain on Saturday, which could happen. But for X30 Senior, Emory, kick it off. You're 5. Who do we have to watch? Who's on your roster here for this week?
So I think we need to start out kind of on the initial go and just Ryan Norberg. He'll be up front. It's a new track for a lot of these guys up at the front of the national field. I mean, pretty much anywhere you go, Ryan's going to be up there. And I think it's one of these things where you could say he's kind of in a slump from a result standpoint. Like this season, he struggled to kind of get that main event victory, but the pace-wise, it's been there every race. So Norberg, Garrison, Morgado, like those 3, I think are solid picks to be inside the top 10 or so. But in terms of my fantasy pick, I'm going to start with Norberg at the top. You have to go with that. I think looking down the rest of the list, I'm pretty high on what what Mateus Morgado has been able to do. I really think Speedsportz is a track, maybe not quite as much in the engine dependence, which I think in X30 could lead him to have a pretty solid weekend. Then you got to look at some of the KR guys. I mean, obviously, Arias coming off the main event victory at USPKS in Orlando. I mean, in the points, his result isn't necessarily incredible. I mean, which kind of shows the variability in the point standings and just how much consistency across the heats is going to matter. But for Arias, it'll be interesting to see how he translates on a track that isn't his home track when it comes to picking back up the Kart. I mean, it's been a while since he's been on the national scene. 2 years to be exact. So kind of going to a track that isn't home, how this goes. But I do think Arias will be up there. But I think I'm going to have to go with Norberg is my first pick. Joe Turney is my second. Mateus Morgado is my third pick. And then that leaves 2 left, including 1 rookie pick. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the box here. I think one of the guys that I think is going to have a good weekend is Donovan Bonilla. Thinking all the way back to round 1 in Homestead, the Winter Series, he had a strong weekend there. He's been kind of up and down from a pace standpoint the entire season ever since. He's been roughly 10th or so. But I really do think Speedsportz is a new track for a lot of guys, like I mentioned. It kind of has tendencies that I would say is a little bit more similar to what you'd be racing down in Mexico. And I think that's something I was talking to both him and Ernesto Rivera about it down both at PK and then recently in Orlando about how that kind of plays into it. So I think that I could see this being a good weekend for him. Obviously, working with Ryan, continue to get better. We've seen the improvements there. So I think Bonilla is kind of a little bit of an outlier pick. And then to keep it on the Texas side of things, my 5th and final kind of outlier pick, I'm going to go Elio Meza. I mean, we've seen him have solid pace throughout the season. I really do think Meza, the equipment may be a little bit of a limiting factor, but at the same time, outside of Aden Rudolph and Noah Baker in that X30 field, he's got about as many laps around Speedsportz as anyone. He's been inside the top 15 for most of the winter, and I think this could be an outlier result. So I'll go with Meza as kind of my 5th rookie wildcard pick.
Alex, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, first I'm going to start off. Emory kind of stole my thunder there with Elio Meza. I thought I had a pretty cool pick there. Like you said, Elio, from the Texas side, had a really strong, campaign so far this year in the senior class, right? He's been really, really strong in KA. And like you said, with the equipment not sort of being there for the X30 side of things, he's been top 5, top 6 in pace. Maybe not had the luck in the races he would have liked, but I think with the track he's comfortable with, I think he'll be really quick. Obviously, Ryan Norberg, right? Norberg, whether it's a track that people, go to quite often or a track that, like Orlando, that it's his home track, Norberg's always going to be really fast. Joe Turney, I think we always have to put him in the mix, right? The KR guys are really quick. Turney's really, really fast. Like you said, Emory, Morgado, super quick all weekend in USPKS. Whether or not he had the qualifying he would have wanted, he always finds a way to make it up through the field. You got to include Arias Duquesne in there, right? I mean, even though the points don't show it standing, how qualifying is, going up to the field when it matters most. And won the main there in Orlando. And for my last pick, I thought Emory was going to take him, but I'm going to put Harley Keeble up there. I think those Sodi guys have put together a really, really strong little team there with the PK guys. He was down there at Homestead last week, and I was coaching there, and he said he felt really strong. I mean, he was testing down at Homestead with some really, really old tires, but he said he felt really comfortable going to Texas. And I think with a few more laps, he would have won the main there in Orlando. But yeah, I got those are my top 5.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I like it, especially Keeble. I think, we talked about Aden having momentum. Even with Arias winning, there was almost a little bit expected because of how good he is and how good of a record he's had. It was just going to be how rusty he's going to be. He was almost overshadowed with that win at PKS by the fact of Harley Keeble. And then SCUSA Pro Tour, same thing with Morgado winning. Keeble had a bigger crowd reaction for the amount of Sodi guys that were pumped up and putting that brand up as well. So, for the winners through the week at both of the X30 mains, it felt like they were overshadowed a bit, but I think that's for good reason. And I think Harley Keeble's on a hot streak. Won one of the days over at Sonoma. The other day he had to come from the back for the Challenge of the Americas finale. So the kid's been active in single speed stuff, even more so than where he came in with, basically just gearbox running in the year and a half prior, I think, before that SCUSA race at Orlando. And now he's got that race in the books. He's got a regional race in 100cc or national, whatever you want to call it, for Challenge of the Americas. Some top guys in it. 100cc race where he's won, ran up front there. I think he's going to be strong this week. So Taylor, to you, we've got Keeble. We've picked out Meza. Anyone else standing out? And then what's your 5?
Well, one driver who I'm going to be looking at also, he got a podium when we were here with the TSRS series at this track. Oliver Hodgkins, maybe not a front runner, but could be one of those if things were to happen with some of our big names, such as Norberg, Turney, Morgado. He could maybe sneak his way up there into a top 5 finish. So I'll probably put him towards maybe a fourth or fifth place positioning, depending on how this race turns out, especially with the inclement weather we could be seeing. So that could be another factor to throw in. Another driver who I'm also looking at, Harley Keeble, of course, first USPKS event that he'll be racing this year with the Sodi team. I mean, that Kart, that team with the PK has been really strong, has had a couple of good runs. I think they have a lot more to showcase as we progress through the 2023 year. So keep an eye on that. Another driver also keeping an eye on is Aden Rudolph. Of course, this is his home track, so he has home field advantage. Could come out with a good top 5 run. Another driver also I'm going to be watching as well. He's got a lot of momentum on him with the new team, of course, Hayden Jones. I think Hayden can have a good run if that opening presents himself with that Kart Republic and the Trinity Karting Group as well. So keep an eye on them, as those are the big 4. I think that would have a good run. And then, of course, one big news to talk about, Paulie Massimino going back over with Mike Doty Racing as well as with the Lando Kart. So Lando Norris Kart. So that's going to be another good one to watch as well. I have to say, who can maybe work his way up if opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, everybody forgets that Paulie led a good part of that main event at Orlando before fading back in the final 5 laps when the leaders caught up to him. So, I mean, that was another guy that was starting to hit his stride a little bit as the season was getting going and then has to switch gears. It's a familiar team with Paulie for BJR and MDR. It's a group he's worked with. He's won races with. He's won the Supernats and K Senior, won titles with them. And it's a group he's normally working with on the regional level and the club level, doing a lot of coaching and hanging around. So there's not going to be that little bit of kind of getting to know each other type of weekend or getting to know the go-kart. He's still on an OTK chassis, so everything's going to be the same, just with a more familiar environment than what he's been in, or still probably just as familiar as he was, been with Speed for a little while. So I think that's another guy that could be really good. Aaron, we'll give you the chance for some picks here, really, for your 5.
So I mean, you guys stole a lot of the really fun picks that I was thinking here, so I'm a little frustrated there. I want to give Meza a shout out. Kid's been super quick, super impressive the entire time that he's been in senior this season. I saw Oliver Hodgson on the list. Really excited about that. That's going to be really cool. One of the more notable entries, in my opinion, is Zachary Clayman DeMello going to a KR. I think he ran the TB at the start of the year, moved into the Lenzo Kart, found a lot of success with the Lenzo Kart, did pretty well. I think a lot better than people were expecting for a brand that we haven't heard of in the U.S. ever. This is their first season trying to come out and do any U.S. operations out there. He's now on a Kart Republic for this race. I think with the track record that Kart Republic has had and just seeing how fast he's been and how racy he can be, I think ZCD is going to be one of the front runners, and he's going to be noticeable this weekend. So ZCD is one of them. My rookie pick was definitely going to be Helio Meza. Kid's got home track advantage. He's super quick. I think that's pretty much a given. I really liked Harley Keeble. We already covered him, but Harley Keeble, super impressive driver, has been outshone just a little bit at every event, even though, like we said, he's had probably a little bit stronger of an event or stronger of a weekend than I think the drivers that were there, but he couldn't quite get that win. He's going to be up in contention there. Braden Eves is making his first X30 start of the season on the MPG KR, which is big because I don't think he's run X30 since Super Nationals. So it'll be maybe a little bit rusty for him, but he's been staying in the K stuff. I think he'll be all right there. And then my last pick, I just want to go Blake Nash. He's been strong at points, and I think he needs a breakout weekend at some point. Blake Nash is a driver this weekend where there's very little home field advantage for most of the drivers outside of 3 or 4 of them that have been to Speedsportz a bit. Blake should have a good weekend this weekend as well.
All right. I think that's fair. I mean, Blake's been good. I think, where he had momentum kind of coming out of February with how good he was, I think he was hoping to go maybe a couple steps higher, and then it just wasn't there at Orlando. So that's a solid pick. And he was also, I think, kind of on the fence on whether or not they'd be here. Braden's a good pick as well. I'm going to go a little bit, I'm going to kind of have kind of a half and half, I think, lineup for my 5 on this week. First of all, let's bank on a little bit of rain here. So if you're going to go rain racing, I think you have Oliver Hodgson and you have Joe Turney, and maybe you even throw Harley Keeble in the mix there with the Brits that are always super, super fast in the rain. I don't want to count out Brandon Carr, so I'm going to put him as a rookie pick on it because I think even outside of the USPKS run that he's had, ever since really they got out of Homestead for the whole month of Orlando. I mean, he was really, really good at both of those races. And, I know he's been more active in the seat as things have warmed up over at Mooresville at Trackhouse Motorplex. So I think Brandon Carr, I think you go Harley Keeble, I think you go Joe Turney, and I think you go Oliver Hodgson. Hodgson's the one that I'm a little bit uncertain of because as world class of a guy as that guy is, he's an IME World Final champion. He's one of the best that's come out of the United Kingdom in the last decade, along with the likes of Turney and Keeble. And Brandon Carr is super good as well, but he's still, the youngest of them all, and is yet to kind of get, some big senior level wins. So I have a pretty British heavy group there. And then, looking at the way that the racetrack is, right, this track is a lot more flow than anything else. And so keeping that in mind, this is where my hesitation is with Hodgson. And it is a little bit with kind of any other brand besides the gold standard ones. I think we've seen KR be pretty good about everywhere that it's been, obviously winning Supernats and then being good with one driver or another throughout all 3 months of the year so far. Obviously, OTK is really good so far. The asterisk of everywhere that we've been to this point in the season is they've been curb-heavy racetracks. Homestead, you're still mobbing them a little bit. The pavement's a little bit different than the standard racing surfaces that we're used to. And Orlando's a standard racetrack, but with the way they've set the curbs up over the last few years, with the kind of widening of them and making them a little bit bigger, I don't remember exactly when it was. It was either 2020 or 2021. And when you have to fly curbs like that through the center of half the racetrack, you're taking out the ability for the chassis to kind of flex their muscle or show bits of weak points with center cornering roll speed. This track, you do roll the curbs a little bit, but they're not as ferocious in the way that you take them. And there's no real sections that you're going to be flying them. And the ones that you do kind of ride them, you're still really using a lot of the chassis load. So this, to me, is the first real test for the Sodi guys with Keeble of how good their stuff really is on a different type of racetrack that you're not able to make up for it by being really, really good at flying a go-kart in the air. You would think the same with the Burrell guys because they were a little bit hot and cold throughout last year with Kremers. But I think the ace in the hole they have is Aden Rudolph to keep that chassis dialed up. So any of those guys are super solid. And then from driving style wise, with it being more of a kind of more roll speed type racetrack and a lot more momentum based, I think looking at the way the styles are, I think that suits a guy like Joe Turney a little bit. I think it really suits a guy like Ryan Norberg. And I don't know if it's exactly the same of the type of stuff that you see with like a Mateus Morgado, who's still good, still very, very good, but he's not, I would say, like that being his strong suit. I think Mateus is a big time sender guy. I think Arias Duke Medjin can be a little bit in between, but he likes to kind of run a looser kart than everybody else, which could be good here, could be not. It just depends. I know when we go to GoPro, that would be the track that he would normally struggle at the most because it's the least point and shoot racetrack we go to. So for the guy that won the final in Orlando, I'm curious to see how he does here. But out of my four and recapping all of that, I got, again, Hodgson, I think. I think you have Turney, Keeble. I think you go Brandon Carr because I think that kid's on fire right now. And I think he's just going to be super, super fast wherever we go. And to cap off that group, I've been a big Austin Garrison fan, and I still think he's super, super solid, and I think he's going to be really fast here. He's one of the few guys like Norberg that actually have raced here at anything above a club race. Norberg's run a Texas State race here about 4 years ago, and Garrison's run a handful of regional races here over the last few years, ran most recently a shootout race that they ran back in the fall of 2022. So those guys are all good. What worries me about Garrison was the engine failure that he had and in Orlando and races where he should have been really, really fast at the SCUSA Pro Tour. So I'm a little hesitant to go with him. The easy pick is Norberg. I'm going to go with a consistent pick in Hayden Jones, which, again, looking if you take back his Orlando results, both with a mechanical issue of some kind in qualifying that would set them back, and then he marched through the field and ran in the top 5 and ran lap times that would be competitive. And he comes from a racetrack that I think is very similar in style, like at Trackhouse Motorplex with his home racetrack. So I feel like he's a solid pick. So I got Jones, I got Keeble, got pretty much all Brits there for the 4, and then an American, Hayden Jones, and Brandon Carr is our rookie pick with Turney and Oliver Hodgson. It's kind of international level guys, and I think Turney comes in hot. And Hodgson, I think, if it rains between him and Turney, I'm really, really excited to see if any of those heats go that way or if we get any rain on Sunday. But that's what I got for them. And for Shifter, to switch over a little bit, we know kind of the baseline of our main contenders. So instead of going over the overall 5, when you look at the entry list here, because you have your obvious picks of who you would expect to be in that top 5 tip 6 group. You got Marin Kremers and AJ Myers. We have Danny Formel. We expect Hunter Pickett to be there. He's been solid here through the month of March. You look Giorgio Carrara, super solid as well. And then maybe one more kind of, pick to maybe get in. Max Hewitt was fast here. Jordan Musser were both fast here. The TSRS race about a month ago. And then a handful of other guys that are just kind of starting to crack closer to that top 5 group, like Ayrton Hernandez, Talon Yockel, and so on. But I think it'd be more fun to try and pick the top 3 and pick the podium in order. So knowing that, we're going to toss it to our best statistician in the world here in Emory to kick us off once again. Emory, give me a podium here of our top 3 guys. We know roughly what our 6 or 7 we expect to be up front.
All right, well, it's been a disaster class of a year for AJ Myers. I mean, pretty much everything you could list has gone wrong to some degree over the course of the last 4 months, and it's not been a lack of pace. I mean, AJ's had rapid pace, whether it be issues with the tires, whether it be mechanical failures, whether it be a DQ in tech, crashing and qualifying, as we saw down at Pro Tour in Orlando. I mean, it seems like instance with Mario, you name it, he's done it. But I think this race is the race for AJ. It's a track that will have similarities to someplace like GoPro, which even though obviously he grew up in the Florida area, a lot of experience on those tracks, he's got a lot of mileage around GoPro the last few years since moving over to the Mooresville area. I think that will probably factor in. It's not quite as curb heavy of a track, which you would think is more of a Formal sort of thing, which I think with that being said, I'll go AJ in first and I'll do Marian in second and Danny in third. I think those 3 are kind of a step above what we've seen from the shifter crew all year long. We've seen obviously AJ Myers down at a couple of the rock events has had the advantage on pace. Marian at a couple of events has had the advantage on pace. And lately at Orlando, it was all Danny Formal. I also had Billy Musgrave with the whole 175 stuff. But if you look at on merit, kind of the 3 of them together, it kind of has gone back and forth. I think just looking at driving style, though, this seems like a track that would be more relative to each other, more of a Marian AJ thing. I think just because he struggles so much, and I think he's had so much bad luck, I'm going to take AJ to get the monkey off his back and finally win one in 2023. I think Marian will be there all weekend in the rain. I'm excited to see what happens. I think watching Marian in the rain, if it rains, especially on Saturday and a Sunday, could be really fun to watch. But I'll take Marian P2 and I'll go with Formal right there in third. I mean, it could be any of those 3, but I think that's the order I'm settling with.
All right. Okay. AJ taking the win with that the banner shot guy, the high speed redemption for AJ Myers. Alex, top 3 in order. What do you got?
All right. Yeah. So Emory kind of said it there. Those 3 have been kind of in a class of their own. So we kind of know the top 3, in my opinion. The question is what order. Obviously, if it rains, right, Saturday into Sunday, I think it makes things really interesting for the top 3. I think it could shake things up completely. I think Marin, if it rains, is my pick for the win. I don't want to count out Hunter Pickett, right? Really smooth driver, maybe not a big send guy like those 3, but really smooth guy. We saw him in Orlando kind of staying off the curbs and still being real quick. So I think if it rains, I'm going to go Marin Kremers P1, AJ Myers P2, and I'll go Danny P3. But Hunter Pickett, I think, is right there. P4, maybe fighting for third. In the dry, it's a different story for me. In the dry, I'm actually going to go Formal in the lead, to win. Kremers second, AJ third. But yeah, if it rains, I got AJ winning for sure. Or Marian winning, sorry, if it rains. AJ second, Formal third.
Taylor, what do you got?
I was looking over some of this and also kind of looking over the weather as well, because that's going to be the big determining factor, of course. And I am going to have to go and agree with Alex on this. It's going to be Marin Kremers if it rains. And if it doesn't rain, I'm going to have to agree with him on it. Danny Formal. Now, if we stick with just the rain, I think possibly, because we know how AJ is right now. He hasn't gotten a win yet this year as far as dealing with all this pressure. So who's not to say that pressure might be getting to him just a little bit of not being able to get that first win of the season. I think, honestly, Hunter Pickett could possibly sneak his way up into second, because if AJ gets a little bit too aggressive or has another issue, that can move him up. And then, of course, I put Danny Formal in third position.
Okay. Okay. Aaron, what about you?
So I think the way that I see the weekend playing out is it's probably going to rain on Saturday, which is the second two heats. I think Marin Kremers is going to get pulled for the final. However, I think AJ has had Marin on hole shots the entire season. I think it has looked pretty consistently like AJ has been better on the start. So I think Marin is the pull to start. AJ is going to be the one to take the hole shot, and he's going to be able to win from there. He's going to defend. I think worst case scenario, it's going to be AJ, Marin, Danny. I feel like with the lack of any track knowledge in general, though, we're going to give a little bit of a shot to some other guys. I actually want to go AJ with the win, Marin in second, and then Giorgio Carrara in third. I think he's been really quick, as we've seen, and I think he's looking for a little bit more. A new track that nobody's been to, including him now, is going to give him that little bit edge that he needs to get onto the podium now.
Okay. I'm gonna flip it here. I'm gonna agree with a few of these guys here from earlier. I think Hunter Pickett is gonna crack the top three and get onto the box because there's gonna be something or another running with KZ stuff. We've been pretty one thing or another's taken one of the big three guys out between Danny, AJ, or Marion. Right? AJ goes out leading the race with a brake failure. Danny has an engine grenade on the stand, and then with at least when it comes to the SCUSA race, and we go back to USPKS. Danny was the big guy there, but he was also the guy that could get over the curbs the best at Orlando. I don't know if he's going to be able to get a whole lot more out of him than the other guys here. They're just not as beefy. You don't get as much of an advantage for flying them. I guarantee if we look at some corners by the time Friday practice and morning warm-ups get underway, Danny's going to be hitting curbs in places the other guys will not, just because of the way that guy likes to drive and the way he's able to drive. But I like AJ in this place. I think, like mentioned, out of the three of them, he's the one that's gone the longest so far without a big win, dating all the way back to Newcastle last year in August. So we're coming up on almost a year since Mr. Magic's gotten it done. You look at tracks where he's really, really been solid. It's been tracks like Utah, tracks like Newcastle, and tracks like NOLA that have a lot of good flow to it. I think it plays into his wheelhouse really well. I don't think that Marion or Danny will be anywhere behind, but I've got AJ on top of it. I think, I don't know. I'm curious to see. Marion's the only one that really hasn't gotten like a bad break this year in one way or another. So without officially jinxing him by calling it, maybe it's an anti-jinx by saying that he is going to break this week and the other guys won't. I think Marion maybe has an issue. I think you go Danny second with Pickett right on him all the way through. And I think AJ pulls away a little bit. I feel like this is a good week for him. I think he's hungrier than he's ever been. And I think especially after seeing those two guys trade wins throughout the month of Orlando, he wants to get back there. So I think we got AJ for this week, but I know that Danny's going to be listening. I know that the other guys will be listening, and I'll add fuel to it. So maybe if I want one guy to win, I shouldn't pick that guy. But either way, I think they're all going to be close. Like Alex said, we've expected the big three to be there. I'm really curious to see where the field either tightens up or spreads out at a track like this, where there's a little bit less data to go off of. Right. I think that's what maybe, could hurt a little bit of Carrara, because we saw Giorgio get better throughout the progression. It felt like out of Orlando week to week to week. And catching up with data for the Lenzo guys. And then we go to a racetrack here where at the most teams were here last weekend to test, and then they get on track tomorrow for a day and a half worth of practice before we go to qualifying Friday afternoon. So to me, I think it's an AJ racetrack. I like AJ for it. I think Marion and Danny will be close. I think this week is the week that Marion gets hit with the cartoon anvil. And then I think Hunter Pickett being right there is just going to be close. And maybe he goes more and surprises everybody, because you always have that option or opportunity where you see kind of a dark horse get a win in some way or another. We've already seen it once this year with Josh Conker. So it could be. And I want to give a shout out again to the Texans and Jordan Musser and Max Hewitt, because I think those guys could easily complete the top five, if not put some pressure on. Because everybody else here is the only guys that have really gotten a lot of gearbox racing action at this racetrack. And when it comes to the first few laps, as we all know in shifter, that's the most crucial. Once you get kind of single file, you can block pretty easy, but the starts and then where you can get around guys when they bottle up in the first lap, that hairpin at the end of the backstretch will be big. That's all going to factor in. So that'll put a nail in what we got here for picks for this week. As always, guys, your KC Fantasy League picks are available down below. We'll have a little more track info as the show goes on, but more than anything, I'm stoked to have the man for the Stars Championship Series, Sexiness you guys see on social media, and, of course, the liaison I don't know how else to describe him because he's the point guy when you think Stars Championship Series to go ask in the paddock, at the races, online, email, whatever, is Christian Marsh, and a big part of everything that goes on with the NKA. So if you have any questions for Christian for the Stars Night fight and anything else that we're going to get into, you could send those into the comments here. We're going to take a commercial break and bring back the bearded man here in just a moment. Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as Iami and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jecco Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. Don't settle for a national engine builder. Take care of yourself with an international one. SRP Engines is a global industry leader in engine services, specializing in engine formulas such as KZ, OK, OKJ, and Mini 60. SRP Engines is the engine of choice for Magic Kart USA and helped power North America's #1 ranked pro shifter driver AJ Myers to the 2021 SuperKarts USA Pro Tour National Championship. SRP Engines can also service any spec engine class of your choice, including Iami and Rock divisions. However, if you're looking for the absolute choice when it comes to KZ shifter engines, there is nobody better. For more information, contact Amr Sonata at srp-engines.com. KC Happy Hour is proudly presented by the Rock Sonoma Karting Championship, presented by Cameron Race Promotions, the most competitive Northern California karting series. Featuring a 2-day format with practice on Saturday and racing on Sunday, multiple track configurations, and a massive prize structure including tickets to Rock Vegas, race car test opportunities, and race rewards. Rock Sonoma is the training ground of multiple national karting champions each year and race car champions as well. Featuring a full Rock Cup USA class structure with each race weekend streamed live via YouTube, it's a series you cannot miss. For more info, check us out online at zanzarukarting.com. All right, guys, welcome back. Let's go ahead and bring him into the studio, Mr. Christian Marsh in his full Stars attire. I know you've been sick as a dog lately, so I want to say thanks, bro, for coming on the show, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I'm hoping I survive the night, man. So we're doing good, though. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so let's talk about what the last couple weeks I'm sure have been as everything ramps up closer to an event, right? So what's the hours looking like for you? What's the days looking like? Are you just ready to finally drop the green next Friday night?
Yeah, I got to be honest, man. The last 2 weeks, the last 2 months, that's really when it's busy for me. Once we get to the track, outside of taking care of any issues that come up or just communicating with the paddock and the racers, we kind of just pass everything off to the team and let them do their job. So, everything leading up to the event, the stuff that, maybe gets overlooked, all new branding stuff every season, all new apparel for both the workers and for retail, big awards, putting together sponsorship deals and cool prizes for the season and stuff. So, man, I got to be honest with you. I'm excited to just kind of get to the track and pass it on to somebody else.
So what is there any kind of cool nuggets you've got over the last 2 months of work that you can drop that we got coming for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that are still in the works that, everything that comes up last minute is sometimes the coolest, but we got a couple of partners that returned actually with us this year. Extreme Sim Racing, one of them. We're going to be giving away a bunch of simulators, a bunch of gift cards and stuff for them. Working obviously with the guys over at Kart Class and Dave Sarah. So we're going to put together some cool stuff there, cool opportunities. I think probably the one maybe I'm most excited about is the Open Fender Pole Award. Not necessarily because of the benefit it's going to give to the people who win the pole award on the season, but more because of believing in what Open Fender's doing for the community. Like the amount of pictures I see of these kids that are like, oh, I just raised $10,000 and now I get to go run the Rotax Grand Finals when I would have never got to do that on my own. I think that's really cool, and it's something that fills a need in the same way kind of Kart Chaser fills a need for the sport in the U.S. So
really stoked to be working with those guys. And then some, potential partnerships we're signing off on this week and next week to get some people, maybe some opportunities that most kart racers don't get to experience before they're out of the seat. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things you guys have got is not only it's been like, single year deals, but in the case of outside karting companies, right? Extreme Sim Racing, like a perfect example, that you've been able to keep with the series and then kind of grow with and keep that partnership and relationship going. So for the viewers at home, I think I know a little bit of the story being a part of the Stars Esports series, but that's really where the relationship started. So, without giving away every playbook or every play in your playbook, how you're able to pull off, great relationships with guys outside of just someone trying to sell a go-kart or a go-kart part. What's the story been of working with those guys? Because they've been a part of Stars since day one.
Yeah, so I mean, if people don't know or don't remember, Stars started literally just as the esports program. Joe and I had another little regional series we were doing in the Great Lakes region at the time, and when the pandemic hit, everything kind of got shut down. And Joe's an avid esport racer. I spent a lot of time in the sim, and I was like, "Hey, man, let's do something." And the first thing we did, we called Beat the Boss, and it was literally just Joe and then a bunch of go-kart racers, and it was supposed to be like a one-off event. And it ended up getting like some pro drivers from Europe. Robert Kubica ran it, and it ended up being such a good branding opportunity. And more importantly, I think it gave kart racer, like, this is right when the pandemic started. And people don't know what's going on. People were scared for their jobs, scared for what the sport was going to do for that year. So just to have the opportunity to get together with people from karting was rad. So we saw kind of the gravity that had. And, I already maybe had the Stars Championship Series branding and sitting around on a laptop somewhere, just in case. And we were like, let's start this thing and let's call it the Stars Championship Series. And then it was 2 weeks before what was supposed to be our first of our little regional event in the Great Lakes area. We called a print shop and flipped all the banners and flags over to Stars Championship Series, ordered new shirts. And it was literally 14 days from the time we announced the Stars Championship Series till our first event at Newcastle. I think we had like 145 entries. So, it sometimes when you do things, they just kind of have a certain weight without, any sort of, I don't know the word, maybe any sort of influence from our end, right? It was just people were looking for this vibe where it was like people feel like they're family when they're racing with us. They know that like we're kind of one of them. And I think that also resonated with the partners we have, like the guys Kiko over at Extreme. And just it's a racing family. Like, it's just people that care about racing, that care about what we're doing. And the people that are involved in our program all kind of share that same love for the sport. I think that's what keeps it going.
And so how do you, like how often are you like kind of in contact with the Extreme guys, right? Going with their goals. I think that's just a generic sponsorship thing that anyone can learn from, right? Drivers, teams, etc. Because, it's not just get the money, put the banners up, and then you don't have to talk to that guy again.
Yeah.
And they're not a race team that's going to be at your races anyway. So you've got to put that extra legwork in, right? I mean, they haven't been able to make it out to a race yet, or have they?
No, they haven't been. So Kiko and the Extreme team, they're from Brazil. And they have been on such an upswing since COVID happened and the climb of esports stuff that we're lucky if we can get in contact with them at all, just because they're so incredibly busy. When we first started our relationship with them, they had some sim cockpits, some wheel stands. Now they've got the whole Sim Magic brand. They're doing big partnerships with like Formula Drift and all these other companies. So it's actually kind of funny because at first we dealt with Extreme directly. But a lot of our relationships, like, it's about networking and utilizing the resources we have. So there's this company called Rep. It's Racing Entertainment Professionals, and they actually part of what they do is like networking for business partnerships. So they're doing a deal with Extreme. They were able to contact Extreme and say, hey, we're obviously still doing stuff with Stars. Would you guys be interested in re-upping and doing something again this year? And they said, yeah, of course. Leveraging relationships like that. It just kind of, maybe you meet people that way that you wouldn't have met organically. And it's something that's really big for us, is we don't just want to pilfer the same sponsors that other people have as class sponsors at every other series in the country. Not only do I personally not think that's really acceptable to just be like, oh, hey, thanks for coming to our program. Now cough up a little bit more for us to put your banner up. The team's really not getting a ton of value from that. And it's more important to introduce the karting community and the racing community to other companies that they could actually utilize and could actually get some ROI on. So for us, we don't even do a class sponsorship program, for the reason I just told you, as well as I think that anytime you put somebody's name on a class, you kind of open yourself up to that moment where so-and-so's driver gets a penalty overturned. And
Right.
And you have to understand, when you're doing these sort of promotional deals, the facts don't often matter as much as the optics do. So even if you made the wrong call and you go to the video review and the video says you made the wrong call and you overturn the call and give the guy a spot back, the optics of that are, oh, the series overturned the call for the class sponsor's driver. So we want to avoid those situations ever happening. So we do this partner program, which gets our partners ROI in different ways. To be honest with you, the banners and flags of the track are the least of what we do. We've got an email list with 10,000 emails from the NK rulebook, that being free to download online. That's the trade-off, is that you put in your email and it's free to download. So essentially we can plug in these sponsors directly to racers. And the commitment there is that we're not bashing racers over the head in their emails with bogus ads all the time. We're only giving them once in a while stuff that they actually would like. In addition, obviously, like social media stuff, social marketing is super important. So when we can go to a company and say, listen, we've got 13,000 social media followers, and every year we generate 750 to 900,000 impressions. That's the type of stuff they're looking for. So we do a lot of partnered social promotion and stuff like that. And then really just, I think that it's about aligning yourself with people that you share a connection with. So I really like Kiko as a person. All of our partnerships, whether it's like with Mason and the team at Open Fender, with obviously buddies with Dave, Sarah, and Kart Class and those guys, if you guys like each other, you come up with cool shit to do, and then you do the cool shit and everything works out.
And, I think that's really cool to talk about the social stuff, right? Especially because you guys really only ever been rivaled by, I would say probably SCUSA with what Tom's had through Ortenberger. You've done this, you did the SCUSA winter nats at Cal Speed. Was it 2019, right?
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. So you've seen that. You've obviously got a major background in digital media. That makes it a little bit easier knowing what to expect out of that. But the last few years, you've gotten to also be kind of on the other side, the guy that's helping, investing in it. So from a series owner perspective now, has that kind of changed how you look at how you budget it? I mean, I know you guys are in a little bit of a different spot. Every series kind of is structured. You guys have both stars, but it's also NK. So there's kind of an added value if you put a lot of marketing money into getting karting content out there, because it grows the whole sport and you guys benefit from that as well. But how do you view it now? Do you view it any bit differently than maybe where you thought you viewed the value of the videos you'd put together back in the day, the pictures you'd shoot back in the day, now that you're kind of also the guy that's hiring people to help you do that stuff too? How do you weigh that as a series owner a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the most critical things you can do as a business owner, manager, anything like that, is don't screw up the things that are working. So when I first started with Joe in the series that we were doing before Stars, I just managed the social media stuff. And throughout the year, Joe and I became close. I started doing a lot more of the public relations, talking to drivers and teams. But really, that sort of thing is kind of what propelled us. This is our 4th season with Stars, and the trajectory has been almost straight up. And, you know, a lot of that can be contributed to like the team and the people that put on the races and smile and talk to customers at the track. But I think a lot of that can also be put on the marketing and put on the fact that even let's say when Stars was at the bottom of the totem pole and didn't have a ton of entries and maybe only had one or two, national level drivers, it still looked sexy. It still looked like something you'd want to be a part of. And I can't take any credit for that. Hats off to Scusa and Ortenberger and those guys. Most of what I learned from Ortenberger. And even just not only watching him work and Wyatt and Todd and all those guys, but stuff that they sat me down and told me. And even at personal times in my life where I was like working for a team and wanted to do the social marketing stuff more and didn't really have a way in. Ortenberger was like, I'll give you work. I'll feed your family basically until you get your feet on the ground. And that's when I met Joe actually. So, I think that if that's worked, it's obviously got to be something that we maintain. Because if we give up on it now, then, maybe the series would stay big, but it loses something that it's at the heart of what the series is. And so that's really important, I think, to not just forget the things that got you to where you are and just change and kind of, let your core values go. And obviously putting effort into our marketing is one of our main core values.
Right. Cause it's, I run into this a little bit and weigh it out a lot, in our weekends to weekends. You really can't look at it in the short term, right? You can only really value all the money you've thrown into it over like a longer, like what you're talking about, like a more of a long-term 3-4 years. I mean, that's not long-term in business, but that's more than where a lot of people think in our sport of week to week, race to race, month to month, season to season of did this move the needle on entry wise? And then you kind of go back from a grander scope. And then I think on the flip side, right, Scusa, out of every series, I feel like's weathered the storm of the market going up and down of either going to as the peak series or fading away or coming back or going away without, I don't think that happens nearly as seamlessly of them still being super stable on entries without all of the marketing and branding put out there. We talked to some guys here. I've got some buddies, just like you do through karting that we met around the world. And part of it is they know Scusa because they've raced the Supernats. And the other part is like when they think of like American national kart racing, that's all the content they've seen online for the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
So that's the series they think to follow. And we can see it on the numbers here too. I mean, those, USPKS comes really, really close, but to be, or sometimes evens it, but it should be outpunching its weight because it's got an extra 50 entries. So you'd think that's an extra number of 50 drivers, families, and friends that would tune in on top of the standard following. But Scusa's got like, they don't, I mean, in the same way, Super One over in England, that's not the biggest series and hasn't been for a while, but that's the series that everybody thinks of because those guys would put tape delay race replays on YouTube for years, you know, and it makes you stay around longer. It's almost like a stability thing just as much as it's a growth thing, I feel like, and how volatile our sport can be.
Well, and people don't realize how lucky we've been content-wise in the sport of karting. Like, if I think back to, I think probably 2010, 2011, you start seeing like John Schaffner and Wyatt Lloyd are posting videos. And it's like 240 frames per second, karts in Lancaster jumping curbs and hitting the ground and sparks go everywhere. And it's like IndyCar doesn't have content like that today unless it's coming out of like Flying Lap Media and Chris Ortenberger, who's now kind of moved on from karting to car stuff. Like you're not seeing the level of content we've had in karting for 2.5 decades almost in IMSA, and like it's just kind of they're catching up to karting right now. And I think people almost got kind of desensitized to it. It was like, when the videos first started, it was, and part of it's, I'm sure, the social algorithms or whatever, but I had karting videos get 30, 40,000 views. I know Scusa's had videos get over 100,000 views before. Now you're lucky you put a 4 or 5 minute video out, you're lucky it gets 1,000 views. And if that, how many of those views are playthroughs or whatever. So people don't understand how lucky we've got it. And I think that, a big part of karting, whether we want to admit it or not, is ego driven. I think I'm faster than the other guy. I'm spending $10,000 to be here and I'm walking away with a $50 acrylic trophy. So if it's ego driven, they want to be able to go to work on Monday and show their employees or their partner a video of their kid ripping laps or doing something cool the weekend before. So I think not only is that valuable in getting new people into the sport because they share that stuff on social, and then Johnny from up the road goes, "Oh, I didn't know your kids did this."
Right.
But it's also part of the value of the people that spend this money to go run these big races. They expect to leave that race feeling like rock stars, and that's part of the deal too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've joked about it a little bit here, and I get myself into trouble sometimes on the comment section on this show of like reminding everybody that as much as we all want to be rock stars, we're all not, you know. But at the same time, if you're a series, you're providing a service to the drivers, right, of putting on an event and making them, they all got to feel a little bit special, right? If you come away from a Stars weekend feeling like you were part of a big show, it just makes you want to go back and be a part of it at any class, and even if you're just not driving, to be there at that deal. So I know we've talked about SCUSA a little bit, branching off of them, right? You guys have through the NKA, because the NKA is pretty much the insurer right now for damn near every touring series and 200 plus, right, tracks and clubs between the dirt, the sprint, the road race stuff around the country. You guys have it where, probation at a Stars race, banned from a Stars race, that carries over into every NKA event and vice versa around. That's no different than the joint statement that SCUSA, USPKS, and ROC put out last year. Obviously, we've talked about it. We had Tim Coyne on the show last week talking about his program with the NAKL that's got a penalty point system for the guys that run both, because as we all know, it's roughly the same crowd running a lot of the same big shows that Stars is starting to get some of, but also I feel like through the social stuff and through how you guys have, made the events really welcoming, have like your own kind of core base audience of like that regional guy. But what was, your thoughts on it? Because Stars could, in theory, be a part of it. It also doesn't have to be. It's an extra fee for the racers, which sucks, but I think it is attempting to solve a problem that everybody's talked about, which is like, we're not points racing anymore in most series because there's so many different events guys go hit, just like dirt, just like a lot of asphalt oval racing, that if you wreck a guy for 7th in a main event and you get a paper penalty, like who cares? And I'm not talking an intentional takeout, like it's a ban, but it's like, I'll root you out of the way for 7th just because you pissed me off, and all right, I pack up, I go home, I go to Stars next week, or I go to ROC next week, right? So like, I don't know. What do you think about that being an industry guy?
I mean, first of all, kudos to Tim and the guys at SCUSA and USPKS for doing that, because I think that at any point, if you're trying to solve a problem and to make the sport of karting better, you're doing a good thing. And I'm big on intention kind of runs the world. And if their intention is to fix a problem and get the culture better, then by all means, I think they're doing a great thing. Personally for us, like you had mentioned, this year we're at, over 320 tracks and series that are part of the NKA program. So that is, obviously there's no way we could have the real numbers, but that's over 85% of the entire country's karting. So for us, what we've been doing for about the past 2.5 years now, and it actually arose from a problem at Stars. We were like, hey, obviously a big focus of ours is culture. And as soon as we had a couple of those national guys start showing up, it kind of, the culture at that point in that scene wasn't as good, and they brought that shit to Stars. And we ended up, it was actually at MCC, we bounced 2 families, and junior parents, being assholes in the pits coming off the track. And we were like, how do we make this hurt? We can tell them to leave Stars, which we obviously have no problem doing. But how do we make it hurt? And we came up with this program where basically if you get suspended or banned, whether it's for a race or a year, from any NKA series or event, anything that's sanctioned by the NKA, we provide the series and tracks with the letter, the tool to use. They can change it however they want. We just want to make sure they understand that they have our support. And then once they issue that suspension or that ban, we then automatically send an NKA letter, that says, based on your suspension from X track or series, you've been put on a 2-year NKA probation. And basically what that means is that you keep your nose clean for 2 years or you're done racing go-karts in the US. And I got to tell you, we have never put somebody on probation that didn't turn into a model citizen after that, or just leave the sport, which is also fine. So that seems to work really well right now. The only two big programs that aren't on the NKA program are USPKS and SCUSA. So I understand why they would do something together. I think that's great. I think they share a lot of like you said, the same core base. So it's really efficient for them to punish people together. But for us, like if you go act up at Rock, you can go on NKA probation. If you go act up at Coda or Rotax or any of the other events, as well as all the big dirt series, all the Maxxis kart racing stuff and Pad Holder Super Cup, all these groups, they have us in their corner to kind of not only encourage them to eliminate that behavior from the sport, but make sure that once they stand up against that sort of behavior, that we have their backs. For us, and I'm sure you'll see it over the next 2 weeks as we get closer to stars, because there are a lot more national level guys signed up for GoPro this year or Trackhouse.
Trackhouse, right? You got to fix all the branding.
Yep. So a lot more guys signed up for Trackhouse. It's by far it's our biggest event to date, over 220 entries already, with over a week to go. So, we will make it really clear that if you come to stars and screw with the culture that we have, we'll just make you go. We have no time for it. There's no place for it. And I think, I've been in the sport for more than 2 decades. Joe's a dinosaur. He's been in the sport since he didn't have bodywork on go-karts.
Right.
And, we've seen and kind of have this mentality of you try to save one asshole and you're chasing away 10 good families. And chances are the asshole's not going to change. So basically, if you come to stars, first of all, the Euro swerve shit, we'll just park you. You'll be done for the weekend the first time you do it. There's no reason for it. I have to say I commend you for the stance you took on it with the CIK last week, because it's something that internally, in the Stars Discord server, we have a race control function where all of our workers and people who have worked with us as marshals or directors, things like that, can discuss and share content. And every time something like that happens, whether it's in karting or in cars, somebody posts a video and we debate it and we break it apart and we watch a video and analyze it and we argue, because it's constantly a training exercise for us to get better on how we work together. And man, some of the shit out of Europe is just disgusting. And they call it a Euro swerve because that's where it comes from. And I don't want to generalize by any means European drivers, but we see a lot of them come over here with this attitude of I can do whatever I want. And you can't touch me because I'm a pro and I'm a world champion or whatever it is. And man, it's despicable. And I don't know where it's coming from, because there's so many things that European karting does right. They've got 3 marshals at every corner stand. The format's great. The point system's great. The classes are obviously the benchmark for international karting, but man, some of their officiating is just god awful.
So I actually had Joe Turney reach out to me on Messenger after that when he listened to the clip from last week, as the only really guy above the legal age of 18 that races senior over there consistently. And was talking to him about it, and it had me on 2 thoughts, right? Like, both, when the pushback bumpers came out, all the comments were like, it's an excuse for lazy officiating. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I don't feel like any of the series that are active right now are legitimately lazy. I feel like, again, like what you're saying, you've got officials that are literally on their off time 12 months of the year just texting crashes and trying to both align themselves, and they're just interested. And then on a weekend, like the days are rough. Our American days are rougher than the European days. They're longer. There's more classes. It's just harder. So it didn't make sense to me, right? But again, seeing clips like that pop up in the European scene, world championships being decided by swerves and terrible standards like that, and never getting penalized, like, I didn't understand it, right? I thought they were just cool with it. They're like, we like that. And Joe gave the insight. He's like, honestly, dude, he's like, I've suggested to those guys, like, because they say they don't see it or they need help, like, add €100 to everybody's entry fee and we'll do it, which is something that we've heard over here all the time from parents is like, we'll pay more money to get more officials, which is like when they're heated, they say that. And then when they get done with the weekend, they're like, that race costs way too much money. But I think it actually is laziness. Like, it's not even just these guys, they're okay with it or whatever, of like how it's coming together. It's legitimately like negligence. And just like the fact that they just shoo off like the driver's input. And it comes, I think, from probably a non-competitive series market because they are the FIA. Like, just like what we were talking about SCUSA, like they've been able to withstand the ebbs and flows of the market when people may not be as happy with the series. The entries are still good because they've got good marketing and branding. And they also are a really well-run ship organizationally when it comes to, the operations of an event, I would say. But over there, you have WSK, you have the new Champions of the Future series, which I don't know exactly the ownership structure behind that. I for some reason, something's telling me there is a link to it, to the FIA, but like, there's no one that's like putting a fire under their butt that their series is going to go under because they are what they are and they have the world title and they're able to be at the FIA Gala, that they are legitimately lazy. And it's alien thinking to me. And I'm sure telling you this, it's probably alien thinking to you, knowing how much effort goes into you guys and every other series on trying to just keep racing clean. Cause it just seems like they don't care. It's not even they're okay. They just don't care. It's just wild to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, it kind of goes back to what I said about don't lose sight of the things that got you to where you're at. I don't think that the CIK got to where they're at just because of their FIA affiliation. I think they got to where they were at because it was the biggest karting organization in the world. And they were doing it right for a long time. And eventually, if you're uncontested, that's one of the things that's so cool about the open market. And, like, we share ideas and best practices with everyone, because if you catch us in what we're doing, it means we got lazy. It means we were slacking and we weren't still innovating and getting better. The CIK is probably in a position where they don't have to try. And, they're getting 140 to 180 carts per event. And, like you said, for that to happen in 30th, I'm sorry, nobody's going to catch it. No matter where you go, no matter what system they have, no race control is going to catch what happens in 30th. And if they do, cool. But it's hard. There's limited resources. In a program like Stars, I know it's really similar, obviously, to the structure officiating wise at SCUSA. We'll have 4 to 5 marshals in skylifts at every one of our events. Those marshals will all be wrangled by Alec Coates, our competition director, who basically just trust those marshals to make the best calls they can. If they, 2 people see a call, which is usually the case, they debate it. I'm probably going to get lit up for saying this publicly, but this will be the first event that Stars has a video system that we're beta testing. So if the officials are debating a call, it'll go to the video room. The video room will be managed by Justin Dittrich and initially Joe Janowski, just because of his experience level with establishing stuff like that. And then basically it takes the guesswork away. But that being said, within the top 10, if you have 4 or 5 marshals and lifts, there's never an excuse to say, I just missed that. There's just not. And the amount of videos we see of like the world finals where somebody drives someone like shit to win the world championship, it's like, take the world championship away from them, because integrity means doing the right thing, even when it sucks, even when it's hard. And that's something that, I understand is incredibly hard to do the right thing, even when you're, going to upset somebody or piss somebody off. But I think if you do the right thing, no matter what, you always have a leg to stand on. You can always go, well, you can hate me, but this is how we call and this is how we call the penalty. And this is how we've called it all year. And this is how it's written in the penalty book. And if you do that, you're going to be, awarded a time penalty that's going to take the world championship away from you. It seems like an easy problem to fix if somebody cared to fix it.
Right.
And the thing is, most of the teams, we started having these team principal meetings.
Right.
And most of the teams want you to crack down on shit like that. Most of the teams don't want to be repairing junked go-karts and dealing with pissed off parents and things like that. So I got to think if the CIK took the initiative, that the factories would also be on board with something like that. It's sad to me that, like you said, we have obviously good examples here in the U.S., but all the kids are watching the European karters. Even when European racers come here, if they're mediocre, they're still like superstars to the kids because they're like, oh, that's racing is just better in Europe. That's like the stereotype, right? I don't think it is anymore. I think it changes generationally. But the standards just have to be higher. And part of the reason the standards have to be higher is because ensuring karting is getting harder and harder. People don't understand 10 years ago, there were a lot of carriers that would cover kart races. Now there's 2, there's not that many. That's why
I thought it was down to 3.
And that's why you're seeing, street races go away. And it's why you're seeing some of these things change the requirements for fencing and barrier structure and all that stuff. And, it's unfortunate, man. It's unfortunate because it's propelled by kart racers and at least the karting community in some extent, going after litigation against series. And if the series or track did something wrong and it's negligence, by all means, pursue compensation, things like that. But the problem comes when, somebody trips over a barrier that they weren't watching and, they sue and they get a couple grand. Well, it's fine, but that stuff adds up. And then the carrier goes, maybe karting's not for us anymore. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't affect big series and big programs, but it affects little mom and pop tracks. And that's what keeps the sport alive. So.
Right. We can talk all the live long day about the sponsored guys, but at the end of the day, people buying go-karts are the ones showing up to the local club track. So if those club tracks don't go, all our stuff about professionalism and factory teams and, payouts and whatever, sexy races, that's all gone. And then the funnel up to them is gone too.
And that's why, it's everybody. That's why I commend, the NACL group, because it's everybody's responsibility to make karting better. To make it safer, to make it more family friendly, and to make it a community that you can be proud to be a part of. So it's everybody's job, including the racers. So stop screwing it up. Like, do better.
And I know you guys have done the principal meetings. The one last question I wanted to ask you, because I didn't even really think about it until Andy Saisman brought it up when we talked to him last week, that I thought was really cool. And, one thing that, he mentioned of why he felt like, the COTA races have been relatively clean, even with having a bunch of classes like the 100cc senior and junior the last few years being at 30 to 40 go-karts each weekend, of having no red flags for a couple of seasons. And overall, like, even troublemakers in other race series coming to his race and being good. And he thought a big part of it was him being, kind of like how you are as the point guy at the Stars races that everybody looks to talk to along Joe, of being a level-headed guy that kind of sets the tone and sets the culture really well and sets the atmosphere really well. He's like, I'm the guy that goes out and parks your trailer, whatever time it's me. I'm the first guy you greet. I started off good. You're not pissed off, going into the grid. Whereas at other events in the past and the current and the future, if they have a bad experience off the racetrack, by the time they get the helmet on, they're already at a higher level than, let's say, neutral, or even cooler than where they were when they came in. So has that ever crossed your mind? Because it never really did to me, of whether one series was more vicious than another, or the atmosphere of it all. But you guys, I know, make a concerted effort to make sure that you're available. You have the Q&A through the Discord to help everybody to have a good atmosphere. But have you ever thought about the correlation of that to the on-track product of being more respectful and clean too?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think, like you mentioned, the Discord contributes to that, just the sense of community. I think if you have a personal relationship to the person you're racing with, you're more beholden to respect them. And if you have a personal relationship to the people who run the series, whether it's myself or Joe or anyone on the team, you're more likely to be respectful of the whole event. So like you said about Andy, I'm the first person people see when they get to the track. I'm always out of the gate, just telling everybody, hey, thanks for being here. What's your name? Let's get you over with Rusty. He'll get you parked. For the most part, I'm the person people come to when they have an issue, which I think is good, because for whatever reason, I'm, good at staying calm and level-headed. And it's in 4 years, there's been maybe 1 or 2 people that have got under my skin. And those people are gone, and it's because they've basically viciously attacked our workers who we care very much about. So I think that has a lot to do with, obviously, the culture from Joe. Like, Joe's been doing this forever. I mean, Joe's family started SCUSA in the 90s. Joe's been around this at every level. He's done it at the top. He's built it from the ground up. And when you have that level of experience, it just kind of gives you a mentality of like, everything's going to be okay. Even if it's out of control, we're going to figure it out. So there's even times, in the last 3.5 years that I've been learning to kind of be the point guy and run the program, where I've maybe been spinning out a little bit, and I go find Joe and I'm like, hey buddy, I'm spinning out. And he's like, deep breath, dude. It's all going to be okay. This is the solution. If we don't have a solution, we're at least going to go talk to the racers about the fact that we're trying to come up with a solution. And just being transparent, I think, is really key too. But yeah, it's the culture definitely emanates from the attitude the series has. And I think another aspect of that with Stars, just like Andy mentioned with Coda, is that everybody that works with Stars is like a big family. We love each other so much. We're talking all the time. When we're at Stars races, at GoPro, the track goes hot at 12:30. The team gets there at 11. We end the day at 10 o'clock, and then the chances are that 25 of us will be sitting outside of the hotel till 3 a.m. Because those are the 4 or 5 days a year we get to a month we get to spend with each other.
Right.
And so I think that love that we share for each other and the love that we share for the sport really kind of, seeps into every interaction we have. And the most important thing to me, at least, is if you come to a Stars race and you have a bad interaction with somebody wearing that shirt that says welcome to the family on the back of it, come tell me, because that's the problem. And I promise it won't happen. Like, everyone's going to be happier there. They're going to try to solve your problems for you. This year, we actually, someone who's worked with us since day one, Sierra Ebert, was our clerk of the course last year. We've actually moved her to more of a customer-facing position this year. She's going to be the customer experience liaison. So she's going to be positioned on the grid at every one of our races with the sole goal of being able to solve all of your issues. So if you're having a problem, you need to know how the format works. You need to know what the outcome of a situation was or whatever. You can just go see Sierra, and she's going to help you solve whatever issue you have. And then I think that'll add to that same customer experience of like, the more good interactions you can have, the better attitude you're going to have when you get in the cart, and the better attitude you're going to have when you're on track racing with people.
I agree. Well, you guys, I'm stoked to see everyone next week. I know we're going to have a good show. It's awesome to hear you guys got so many entries coming your way. And I appreciate the time for how sick you've been and how busy you've been to come and talk to me, brother. Always.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Christian. We're going to move on to our final segment for the couple of boys that were a little bit late getting onto the show. Aden Rudolph and Braden Robertson, these clowns, are going to help us break down the racetrack here. We talked about them at the beginning, and, they finally made it into the studio. So we're going to give them some heck here in just a moment. Or for those of you guys that are looking for a little bit of extra tips to get around Speedsportz Racing Park or what to expect from the racing this weekend, that's coming up right after this. Ready to go racing along the Gulf Coast? Karting the Coast is a family-oriented regional series that covers Mississippi and Louisiana. Its 2023 schedule consists of 10 races spread amongst Finish Line Performance Karting in Biloxi, Mississippi, and NOLA Motorsports Park in New Orleans. To find out more, visit coastalkarting.com. From 4-stroke to 100cc to 125cc and beyond, Technokart USA has a winning option for you. Based out of Des Plaines, Illinois, Technokart USA offers both chassis designed to win in all divisions of North American karting and a top-level race support program at the U.S. Pro Kart Series, Route 66 Sprint Series, select Cup Karts North America races, and both the Rock Vegas and SCUSA Super Nationals. Podiums, wins, and championships are waiting for you whenever you're ready to get on a Technokart. For more information, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TechnokartUSA. everybody, welcome back. Last little segment we've got here is a bit of a track preview. It was supposed to be at the beginning of our show. Aaron, why don't you bring yourself back on into the studio here really quickly. Let's talk really quick and slander these two knuckleheads before we got in. Aden Rudolph, we said, was going to join us. Braden Roberts is going to join us. You sent them the time, right? They knew when they were supposed to be on here.
I said the time. I may have missed the time zone, which may be on me, but I also kind of figured it's the same time every week. But we can blame me for that one. I'll throw myself under the bus. I probably forgot to put the time zone in there and didn't get them the right time to get on the show. But they've been lighting up our green room area, so I think they're excited anyways.
Let's add them in here. These guys. All right. First of all, let's bring you. Cut it down a little bit. You two are. Is this how you guys are planning on doing this segment with one headset that you share for each ear?
Well,
We can't hear.
well, we didn't plan. Like, I don't have speakers, so it's kind of just like, yeah, this works.
I thought you did like a whole rehearsal, Aden. I thought you were ready to walk us through
we
this
are.
track and
We
everything.
kind of were, but yeah. Anyway, whatever. And
All
Aaron, I had the Google Doc and it said 8 to 8:25, but it didn't say a time zone, so we just figured it was whatever we were in or whatever Xander was in. But it's okay.
Disgraceful, man. Braden, you're killing me. Us gingers don't get enough love as it is, and now we're just looking like clowns here with half of us
That
on
one's
time.
not
half
on
of us
me.
not.
That one's not on me.
It was on me,
Yeah.
on me,
All right.
and Aaron.
Yeah, and Aaron.
Okay.
I'll
So
take the blame for it.
you boys have already had quite a few big moments around this racetrack. First of all, over TSRS the last couple seasons. Aden, let's pull the track map up a little bit on the master overall on the circuit here, Aaron, and let's just break down a couple of key things to note from you growing up as a kid at this racetrack. I mean, you were still in cadets when it first got built, right, Aden? Like in micro or maybe just into mini?
Yeah, it was my first year in mini. I came from Phoenix where we ran Rotax, so I was in Mini Max. But then we came over here. Obviously, there's no Rotax, so I was in Mini Swift.
All right, so let's looking at this racetrack here for you boys. Aden, you first, and then Braden, you. Quick overall tips on how to be quick around this place.
Honestly, it's all very momentum based. It's all very momentum based. Especially the first sector is, you want to carry as much speed. There's very little brake pressure you're using, like turn 1 through 5. The first actual braking point is turn 6, and then into turn 7 you don't really use brakes. Turn 8 and 9 is just fast, flowy. You want to keep your momentum, and you go back into turn 11, your second hard braking zone, and then you go in turn 13. Which is more momentum. You barely brake in that corner. And then really only have 3 key hard braking zones on this track. So it's all really momentum based, and you want to have a good chassis package that, you can carry that speed without, sliding around.
And Braden, to add on to that, what else can you add as other stuff to note as a general basis on getting around this place quickly?
Kind of just the same thing. Obviously, just looking at the track map, there's not a whole lot of braking zones. Turn 6, the main big one. In the rain, we kind of saw Oliver at TSRS. He kind of just ran the inside and just kind of hooked it on the curb. And I looked at the forecast, and it's supposed to rain, so that'll probably come into play.
So if we don't see a lot of braking zones around this track, just in general, outside of turn 6 and turn 11, like you were saying, what does the racecraft look like around the track?
It's kind of, especially in KA, it's kind of what you expect. It's a bunch of just everyone going for everyone going for the lead every opportunity they get, per usual. The racecraft, there's not a whole lot to it. A lot of the time, though, at least at TSRS, and I don't think we'll see it here just because the amount of drivers and the amount of talent. But they're like with the starts, just how they are with the S's for the first section. 2 karts can kind of break away at the start, and usually when that happens, they'll just kind of push each other. Like Adrian and Peyton at TSRS, that's kind of what happened with them. And they just kind of pushed, even though they weren't the fastest, they still kind of helped them stay out front. And I think if that happens, it'll kind of just be the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk track development throughout the day a little bit here, fellas. We saw Orlando, where not only through the week, there's the standard stuff with the tires we've seen this year and the last couple of years, that the week almost gets slower as the weekend goes on. At Orlando, it seemed as soon as it hit 1 p.m., that track just greased up, and then the grip almost never really kind of came back at the end of the day. So, Aden, for growing up here, living here, being around it for so many years, granted, this is going to be the highest I've ever probably put down this place to date. But what's the normal progression throughout the day? When does it quick? When does it slow down? What does it do? From what you know.
I mean, honestly, like first session out, morning warm up, you'll be going the same, same lap. Like your fast lap time will be the same in the first session, and then in the last session it'll all be the same. Really, it doesn't evolve all that much. Maybe when the sun, starts going down a little bit, track starts cooling off. Actually, it'll get grippier. When the sun comes out, it gets greasy and it's not that fast during the day. But definitely, in the evening sessions, maybe in the finals or the last heats of the day, it'll be the fastest.
Aaron, what else do we got here to grill these knuckleheads a little bit on before we kick them out?
Well, like you guys said, it is supposed to rain on Saturday here, at least, like 50% chance of rain on Saturday. Does the rain line look any different than any other tracks that you go to? I'm looking at the track map here, and if you look at turns 1 through 4 here, 1 through 5, you're crossing the line a lot if you try to take a standard rain line. But are there any quirks of the track with the rain line that would probably maybe catch some people off guard?
Honestly, like that first section, it'll be the normal default line. You can ride the curbs. Just like, if you watch the Car Chaser the live stream, you'll see Oliver Hodgson was doing it really well at TSRS. So most of the track, you can run it. The default normal line. But through the hairpins, the tighter corners of the track, you'll run the rain line. So, it's got a good mix of different types of tracks, and the rain line kind of differs. And you'll see drivers, try to explore different driving lines. But for the most part, it's just normal rain line.
And if you were gonna look at this track and you were to compare it to one of the National Series tracks that you've had, or the ones that we've been to, Utah, NOLA, Newcastle, whatnot like that, is there any track that you think of that really reminds you as like a similar feel, a similar style to this track compared to other tracks that we could have gone to?
Honestly, I mean, it's got a good mix of every track. You have the tight sections, you got the flowy sections. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, GoPro Motorplex, where it's got the hairpins, but also the fast flowy stuff. It's really unique. You'll never find a track quite like Speedsportz Racing Park anywhere else.
And if we just go through sector by sector, I've got little sector graphics going on. So we've kind of covered the first sector a little bit here. But what would you talk about this as like one major talking point about these first 5 corners of the track?
For the first 5, I mean, it's kind of it's really twisty. And I mean, like there's not a whole lot of braking, obviously. You'll kind of not really brake through turn 3, but just let off a little bit just to get it to rotate. Just because that is the slowest corner through this section. But I mean, yeah, just super fast through the first section.
And then if we look at sector 2 here, sector 2 that we have pulled up is basically turns 6 through 12 out there. Do you have to change your driving style at all compared to the first part? Is there any adaptability that you really need to go through a lap of this track?
Not adaptability, just like first sector is all momentum based and super flowy. But then once you get to sector 2, that's when the hairpins start coming into play, and you carry a lot less speed than you would in the first sector. So just like turn 6 hairpin, turn 7 another hairpin. Luckily, the hairpins on this track aren't extremely slow, so you'll still carry that like that rolling speed through the corners. But yeah, just it's a little bit different from the first sector, but you still have the momentum corners like turn 8 and 9.
And then finally, we have this little dogleg section here. I actually like how this looks from an outside perspective on it. But is there anything tricky here on this section here, even though it's only 3 corners? Anything weird here, or opportunities to maybe make a pass that people wouldn't think of normally?
I mean, obviously, on the last laps in this corner, it can get pretty congested, especially for like a bigger series like this in KA. I think it'll be pretty interesting to see what goes down here. But through just a normal lap, I mean, there's not a whole lot to it. It's just kind of keeping the speed up through the left turn of turn 13, and then also the same through turn 14. It's a lot of this roll speed, just making sure that you keep the momentum up. But that's really it.
All right, cool. Well, I think we lost Xander. We're trying to see if we can get him back right now. I want to hear you guys call your shot, though. You're both running X30 Senior.
Oh,
Two
no,
cars.
no. He's running KA. I'm running X30.
Oh, Brayden, I thought you were running X30 this weekend.
No big dog for him.
All right. Well, I want to hear you guys call your shots and where you think you're finishing this weekend.
Go first. You got it.
I'm just hoping to make the final. I didn't do that at Orlando, so that's my goal. But make the final, and I'm hoping at least I want to aim for a top 5.
Aden, what are you looking at?
Obviously, home track. Looking for a good result. I think a top 5 is reasonable. I think it's possible. We'll just have to wait and see. The mayhem in these kart races are kind of, you never know what to expect. So we'll see.
All right. Well, thank you, boys, for your time here, giving us a little insight onto the track. Unfortunately, I will not be at Houston this weekend, but you'll be able to see the rest of the crew and stop by. Any last words for the viewers at home right now?
Subscribe to Kart Chaser and watch the live this whole weekend. It'll be a great show.
Brayden, you got anything?
That's it. Yep.
That's it. All right. Thank you, boys.
Thank you.
All right, and that's going to wrap up the show. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get Xander back, but thank you. Make sure to tune into the live stream this weekend. Get your fantasy picks in, and we'll see you guys next week.